this video tutorial is applicable to any kind of work you do in Photoshop, whether it is matte painting, digital painting, web design, graphic design, and it doesn't matter what kind of difficulty are you on, okay? Whether you are beginner, intermediate user, advanced user, this video tutorial is going to be good for pretty much everyone who uses Photoshop. Alright, so for getting started, press Ctrl K on your computer. If you're using a PC, if you're using a Mac, press Command K, and that is going to bring up your preferences dialog box. And in general, what I would want you to change is image interpolation from bicubic automatic to bicubic sharper. This is going to be really good when you are upsampling or downsampling your work. Next would be to remove a check from export clipboard and to remove a check from use shift key for tool switch. This is really going to be good for speeding up your workflow in Photoshop. Next would be putting a check on these three options: zoom, resize window, zoom with scroll wheel, and zoom clicked pointer center. Next is interface. If you guys are beginners, beginners naturally are going to work a little longer to get experience with the program. If you want to work in studios, then you will want to sit down and work with the program for quite a while. So it would be good for your eyes to change the color theme from the default one to the darkest one. This really keeps the workflow and the whole Photoshop in the background, and it allows you to focus more on your project. So that's good. Next would be to change the UI font size from small to medium. If you want, you can go for large. If you have some eye problems, if you wear glasses, then you can go for large, but I would stick to medium. Next, also people would be file handling. Now there is by default I think this is switched on, but for some reason if it's not on, this is really going to be important for beginners, because once again, beginners are going to sit down to practice more in Photoshop, and the last thing you want is to not save your file and then to lose all your work. So this is gonna save your file after every 10 minutes in the background, and this is basically gonna help you out. So if you ever experience a crash, if you applied a filter and your computer isn't able to process it, and Photoshop says goodbye on you, so don't worry, at least you'll be able to recover something with this option. So that's very nice. Next would be performance, awesome people. Wait a sec, let me check this one more time. Maybe okay, next is performance, awesome people. I think by default this number is going to be at 60. This basically tells you how much RAM you have and how much Photoshop is allowed to use. I have got 16 GB of RAM in my machine, and 60%, sorry, let me just drag this down. 60% is going to be around that much of RAM. But if you are using Photoshop for some high-end work like matte painting, or if you're a beginner and if you have this much RAM, superb. You have got some good connections, or your parents really love you. I'm just kidding. But if you have a good machine like this, and you have some good amount of RAM, and you're not doing any kind of high-end work in the background, I highly recommend that you take this number from 60 at least to 80. So just do this, and that's superb. You're giving Photoshop more power to handle stuff, and that's really going to help you out. Next, awesome people, is scratch disks. It's always, awesome people, a bad idea to keep your scratch disk at C drive. By default it's going to be on C. It doesn't matter what program you're using: Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, 3D, Maya, Fusion, Houdini. It doesn't matter what you're using. Keeping C drive for any kind of backup cache files is always a bad idea. So just change this from C to D, and as you can see, D drive has a lot more space, and that's just good. So just change it from C to D drive. Next, awesome people, is changing the history states. History states basically means undos. If you guys are beginners, just change this from 20 to 30. Don't go all the way to 1000. That's the highest amount that you can take, because Photoshop is going to generate a lot larger files, because it has to remember all the calculations that you're doing, right? So just take this up from 20 to 30, maybe to 40, but don't take it to like 80, 90, 100. That's just not good. Next, awesome people, is graphics processor settings. If you guys do not have this, if for some reason this is just kind of grayed out for you, That basically means that you don't have a graphic card in your CPU or your cabinet, or your machine. And if you do have a graphic card, then you might want to get some update on the drivers, because Photoshop cannot detect that graphic card. And awesome people, I would highly recommend you save, you ask your parents for this, you can take a loan. Get a good graphics card in your machine if you are gonna work with Photoshop, because that is gonna change your workflow entirely. Your zoom in, zoom out, all your keyboard shortcuts, your processing, everything is gonna be on a whole different level with a graphics card in your in your machine. So get a graphics card, awesome people. Next is cursors. Cursors I think is okay. Transparency and gamut. This is something that I do for my computer. Change this grid color from light to dark. That's something that I would like to do. And all of these things are good. Next, awesome people, is plugins. In plugins, just put a check on this option: filter, show all filter gallery groups and names. Put a check over there. And that is, awesome people, it. So thank you for watching my video. Those are the settings that I feel that every Photoshop user must do before getting started with their work. Click OK to get out of the dialog box. Do a restart for Photoshop if you can. Do a restart for your machine. And that is how you do your main settings in Photoshop.